Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you again for joining me for another true crime video. If you are new here, my name is Cami, and what I like to do here on YouTube is I like to cover cases that not many other YouTubers have covered, which is exactly what we're going to do today. So today we are going to be talking about a case that really just breaks my heart, and it was recommended to me by my best friend, who found it through a TikTok video. I've said before that I don't like people that harm children. I said it in my Angela McAnulty video. I'm saying it again. I think people that harm children, people that harm the disabled, and people that harm animals are just the worst, because in my mind, these are the three most vulnerable types of people. And people that hurt them really just make me angry. And so if you're looking for a video where I don't get mad, this is not the right video for you. I recommend any of my other videos. You can find them on my channel below, but I don't recommend watching this one because this one's going to be another very sad case. So if you are here with me, the case that we are going to be talking about today is the Tori Stafford case, who was an 8-year-old girl that was senselessly and tragically murdered in 2009. Victoria Stafford, or Tori as she was called, was born July 15th, 2000 in Woodstock, Ontario. Now, Woodstock is a pretty big city. It's got I want to say a population of 40,000 people. And I know normally I do cases on small towns, so this is kind of a new thing for me. It was a big city, and Tori's parents were actually separated. She lived with her mom, Terri, and her brother, Darren, but her father, Rodney, was still heavily involved in her life. Whenever anyone asks Rodney what Tori was like, he says that she was just the sweetest little girl, and that she embodied the pure innocence that does come with children, because even people that don't necessarily like children, they agree that hurting children is one of the worst things that you can do, because children are innocent. They have not been exposed to the horrors of the world, and to hurt them it makes me very angry. She loved Disney, and that was evident by the fact that when she was found, she was wearing a Hannah Montana t-shirt, and the night before she went missing, she had decorated her bedroom with posters of Disney princesses and Bratz dolls and High School Musical. Her favorite color was purple. Her favorite holiday was Halloween because she loved to dress up, just like any other little girl. I remember being her age, and I had just a whole hall full of little costumes that I just loved to dress up in. I liked pretending that I was a princess. And I remember one time, this is a side note, I remember one time I had those plastic Barbie high heels and I went to the store with my mom in them, and my mom heard the clickety clackety of the plastic heels, and she couldn't figure out where it was coming from. She thought it was the cart, and when she turned around, she saw me wearing these little plastic Barbie heels. So she just really reminds me of any little girl that loved to play dress up and loved all things girly. That night that she went missing, she was supposed to spend the night with her father, and she was going to spend some time with her friends as well. April 8th, 2009 is when Tori went missing, and the plan was for her to walk home from school with her 10-year-old brother. And it would be the first time that she had walked home from school. Normally her parents would pick her up, but they had just moved into a new house a week ago, and it was in walking distance from the school. So she was excited to walk home, just like any other child would be. They are finally getting a sense of independence whenever they get to walk home, even if it is with a sibling. She had decorated her room exactly how she wanted it, and she was excited to show off her new room to her friends. So as they were walking home, a few of Tori's friends were actually walking with them, and Darren dropped them off first because he was the oldest. He was the one that was in charge of taking care of them. And when he turned around to look for Tori, she wasn't there. And it was right by the school. Her friends that they dropped off lived right next to it. So it wasn't a very far walk. So he looks for Tori, but he can't find her. So since Darren didn't see Tori, he just assumed that she had walked home on her own. You know, she's 8. Like I said, she's starting to gain her own sense of independence. And when I was 8, I was going into 4th grade, which here is the start of middle school. And man, I just thought I was an adult. I thought I could do everything that the grown-ups did, and I wanted to be treated like an adult. So he just assumed that she walked home on her own. However, when Darren got home, he saw that Tori was not there, and that's kind of when he started freaking out. He went back outside on his bicycle to look for her, but he could not find Tori anywhere. So Tara, which is Tori's mom, gets word that Tori is gone missing, and just like any parent would, she starts to get really worried. At the same time, though, Tara thought, well, maybe she went to a friend's house. So before she called the police, she called all of Tori's friends to see if Tori had maybe went there instead of walking all the way home. When she called Tori's friends, none of Tori's friends had seen her either. She wasn't at any of their houses. So now is when she really starts to panic. So after they found out that Tori wasn't at any of her friends' houses, her grandmother actually called the police and reported her missing at 6:04 p.m. So they get this massive search party together to look for Tori, seeing if maybe she had wandered off, maybe if she had gotten lost on the way home, because, you know, she's 8, and it's still a pretty new house, so maybe she just got turned around whenever she was trying to get home. So they also thought that maybe Tori had wandered off, maybe gotten hurt, and that she was, you know, somewhere in like the woods or something like that, just hurt, and no one is there to help her. But sadly, none of the searches came up with anything. And initially, the police looked at Tara as a suspect because they were like, well, why did you wait 2 hours to report your kid missing? Which, what is that? Okay, you wait too long to report your kid missing, you're a suspect. You report your kid missing too soon, and they're either saying, well, why do you think your kid is missing? Or they tell you you have to wait 24 hours, which, let me say something. You do not have to wait 24 hours to file a missing persons report. As soon as you suspect something is wrong, you can make a missing persons report. You do not have to wait 24 hours like they tell you you do. They also suspected Tara because she was unemployed, addicted to drugs, and hadn't actually gone out to look for Tori, and that she also wasn't technically the one to call the police. It was Tori's grandmother that had called the police. So right away, they take one look at this woman and they're like, suspicious. Now, it was actually surveillance footage found from the high school down the street right next to Tori's school that gave the police the first clues as to where Tori had gone. On this surveillance footage at around 3:30 p.m., they saw Tori walking with a woman, and the police received a number of tips about this woman once it was released to the public. So initially they thought it was Tara that was on the tapes, so they're still zeroing in on Tori's mom saying, you were the one on the tapes, so obviously you had something to do with it. But they later found out that it was another woman on the tapes, who we're going to talk about in a minute. On April 12th, 2009, police then arrested this woman named Terri Lynn McClintock. And originally she had denied any involvement with Tori's disappearance. And it wasn't until about a month later she ends up telling the police that she does know what happened to Tori.
When I seen Mike with Tori on his lap, like, I turned my head because I didn't want to see it. I could hear her calling my name. I seemed like you kick her a couple times, like, the garbage bag over her head. And I didn't have a clear, like, sight of Tori. Like, I could see Mike before I could see anything of Tori. Like,
Okay.
Here's the hammer.
Where did he hit her with the hammer?
I had see the garbage bag over, so there wasn't afterwards. Like, he was pretty much what made it easiest. Like, he knew what he was doing. Like, Like, there was no, like, blood splatter, like, like her voice going, like, she went from her just saying T, and coming, make him stop. Sorry. To faint, like I could hear her, like, mumbling, and it almost sounded like, you know, like when you breathe underwater, like the bubbly, it sounded like I could hear that. And then when I turned back around, that's when Tori was on the ground. He said I didn't see him put her there.
Terri tells the police that she was outside the school with her boyfriend, Michael Rafferty, and then she just drops this bombshell that Tori was dead. So out of nowhere, she tells the police, yeah, I saw Tori outside with my boyfriend, and by the way, she's deceased. Which, you're not even a suspect, lady. You just dropped that. So immediately the police arrest Michael, because when Terri was giving this statement to the police, she tells them that Michael had done some bad things before killing her. So police are like, okay, if Tori isn't alive anymore, where is her body? And so Terri draws this sketch of where they had put Tori's body. So this sketch was a rural area right outside of Mount Forest in Ontario, which was about 132 kilometers from Tori's home. So police go to this area and they start a search, and they find remains that were so badly decomposed that initially they could not identify her. And they only identified her through her dental records, and it was sadly confirmed that the remains did belong to Tori. And at this point, it was about 103 days since she was reported missing. Terri, Lynn, and Michael were both charged with first-degree murder, but Michael was also charged with kidnapping and sexual assault causing bodily harm, and the judge ordered for them to have different trials, so their trials were separated. And I googled, why do defendants have separate trials? I looked at information on this case, but I couldn't find why he decided to give them separate trials. So if any lawyers can tell me down in the comments, it would be much appreciated, because I couldn't find any information about it. Terri Lynn pleaded guilty, and originally she told police that Michael was the one to have killed Tori, but then she later changed her story and said that she was the one that killed Tori, and that she would testify against Michael at his trial. And I don't know if she... maybe she did this because she thought it would give her a lighter sentence if she did. Or maybe she was pulling a Karla Homolka and thought that it would give her some kind of deal if she testified against him. But either way, she offered to testify at his trial. So Michael pleaded not guilty, as expected. And the prosecution at his trial argued that Michael and Terri had abducted Tori on her way home from school. Once again, I'm going to leave another content warning for discussion of sexual assault, and I'm not going to go into any details. I don't think that's necessary, but if you are triggered by it, now is the time to click off. Terri testified that Michael had told her to take a girl that day, and here's something just absolutely disgusting for y'all. Michael said that he wanted someone young because, quote, the younger they are, the easier they are to manipulate. So Terri Lynn said that originally she was just going to pretend to try and take a girl and then go up to Michael and say, oh, I couldn't find anyone. But according to her, she wasn't able to do that because Michael was watching her like the creepy, disgusting human being that he is. So she claims that she had to take a girl because Michael was watching her, which, lady, you could have just, it was a school, you could have just went inside him and like, hey, this guy is trying to get me to take a girl from the school. Can we call the police? But no. She chose to go through with this, and I think she is just as guilty as he is. That was apparently when Terri Lynn decided to approach a child that was alone and walk and talk with her. Terri Lynn says the way that she started talking to Tori is because she claimed that she had this puppy in her car, this little Shih Tzu dog, and asked Tori if she wanted to see the dog. And of course, Tori's 8, so of course Tori is gonna be like, yeah, I have a Shih Tzu of my own, which, yes, Tori had a Shih Tzu of her own, so she said she wanted to go see this dog, that she wanted to go see what this little Shih Tzu, and she wanted to go play with him. The prosecution said that while Terri Lynn and Tori were walking and talking, that Michael was waiting and watching and parked across from the high school where Tori was seen on video, you know, the video that I mentioned. So Tori and Terri Lynn get to Michael's car, and once they're there, Tori was excited to see this dog and play with this dog, as any child would be, but instead of showing her a dog, they pushed her into the car, and Michael was screaming at Terri to hurry up and get her in the car, and Terri covered Tori with Michael's coat after pushing her onto the back seat of the car. So as they're driving on this 2-hour car ride to this rural area where they ended up finding Tori's body, Terri Lynn is talking to Tori about what she likes, about what her favorite color is, and according to Terri Lynn, supposedly she had no idea what Michael planned to do, but like, come on, lady. He's talking about how young girls are easier to manipulate. You knew what he was gonna do. Once Tori was abducted, they brought her to several different locations before they brought her to the rural area that they found her body in. And one of the locations was at the home of a woman named Barbara Armstrong, so that way they could buy Percocet, which if you don't know what Percocet is, it's a really, really strong pain reliever. Sometime after going to pick up this Percocet, they were caught on surveillance video at Home Depot sometime after 5 p.m., and this was after Michael stopped at the ATM. Terri Lynn went inside and bought garbage bags and a hammer, and then they drove to the rural area. According to Terri Lynn, when they got there, she got out of the car because she knew what was going to happen to Tori, which directly contradicts her saying she didn't know what Michael was going to do. So she says she took Tori to this bathroom, and I assume it's one of those, like, public bathrooms that's made out of, like, bricks and stuff that you see at, like, a public pool that has the showers, or even at a public park. Terri Lynn tells Tori that she was a strong girl, and what really breaks my heart is that Tori begged her not to leave her, because at this point, Tori has kind of maybe grown a little bit attached to this woman, and she thought maybe that Terri Lynn would help her, but Terri Lynn never helped her. So instead of rethinking and saying, you know, we're away from Michael now, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I should, you know, call someone, maybe call 911, tell them what's going on. Instead of feeling any guilt, she just brings this innocent, sweet little girl back to her monster of a boyfriend, Michael. Terri Lynn said in her testimony, he picked her back up. She still had hold of my hand. She didn't want to let go. She asked me to stay with her. So I got in the front seat and I tried to hold on to her hand, but I couldn't stay because I knew what was about to happen. I couldn't be there for that. And then Terri Lynn walked away from the car, probably as Tori watched her and knew that any last shred of hope she had was walking away and was gone. I know I shouldn't be making judgments already, but like I said before, this woman is just as guilty as he is. This woman is a monster, just like Michael is. I'm not going to go into details because I don't think it's necessary. We can all infer what happened based on what Michael said he wanted a young girl for. The one thing that I will say, though, is that this attack did not happen quickly. Terri Lynn testified that as she walked away from the car and as the attack was going on, she could hear Tori screaming in the car. Terri Lynn says that after it was over, she went back to the car, and she claims that Tori's screams reminded her of her own traumatic childhood, which, like, okay, lady, if you have your own traumatic childhood from stuff that happened to you as a kid, why would you put another child through it?
Scars of Terri Lynn's childhood are visible in her confessions with police.
He said, well, obviously I'm gonna her. And it's a pretty big trigger for me, like, I experienced that in my own childhood.
There were so many things that she could have done, and I know I'm probably going to get comments saying, well, maybe she was a victim too, but, like, there were other things she could have done besides kidnapping a child to bring to her monster of a boyfriend and to let him do what he did to Tori. There were other options that she had. After Michael was done and Tori was gone. He threw her outside of his car like she was a piece of trash. Like she was a cup in their cup holder that they needed to get rid of, so they just threw her out. Once she was on the ground, Terri Lynn kicked her before placing a plastic bag on her head and striking her several times with that hammer that they bought from Home Depot. They put Tori in garbage bags and put her under some rocks by a tree, and in those garbage bags were also her butterfly earrings and her Hannah Montana shirt. The autopsy revealed that she had died from 4 hammer blows to the head, 16 of her ribs were fractured or broken, and her liver was damaged while she was still alive. So the liver damage came from blunt force trauma to her body, and those injuries alone could have killed her if they hadn't killed her with the hammer first. Because of how decomposed her body was, it could not be determined if she had been sexually assaulted before she was killed, but testimony from Terri Lynn did confirm that. So it later came out that there was actually a connection between Terri Lynn and Tori's family. Tara testified that whenever Tori had gone missing, she was addicted to Oxycontin, and that she had actually bought some from Terri Lynn's mother, and that sometimes whenever she went to go buy this Oxycontin, she had actually seen Terri Lynn there. Tara had also discussed their dogs, and since Tara had 1 and Terri Lynn had 2, they had actually discussed breeding their dogs. So Michael's defense actually argued that Michael didn't know what was going to happen to Tori whenever he abducted her, and they put all the blame on Terri Lynn.
They didn't see or hear this videotape of a full police interrogation the night he was arrested. It shows Rafferty's initial denial.
I didn't do anything.
Well, that's not entirely true.
That is entirely true. I didn't do anything.
It also shows the detective comparing him to one of Canada's worst serial killers.
Am I sitting across the desk from Paul Bernardo here? Am I sitting across from someone who's made a mistake? Okay? And that's going to be the question that's asked of you. All right? I'll get you a bucket there just a second. You gotta get sick, fill your boots there. Okay? I've seen it before. You're not gonna offend me or bother me. So if you gotta be sick, Mike, go right ahead. Okay?
And it shows a dramatic confrontation between Rafferty and Terri Lynn McClintock, the woman who was accusing him of killing Tori Stafford.
This is your opportunity. Terri Lynn's sitting right here. Tell us she's a liar. You've had no problem at saying without her in the room.
Terry's a liar.
Yeah, that's what you're hoping.
I'm not even looking at her.
I don't need to look at her.
They claimed that Terri Lynn was actually who abducted her and murdered her, and their evidence to back that up was the fact that Terri Lynn was the one that had bought the murder weapon and the one that had led Tori to the car. Michael claimed that she had taken Tori because of a drug debt, and that because of this, he could pretty much do whatever he wanted to do to Tori because of this. The defense said that Michael did not agree to do anything to Tori, which they couldn't do any kind of rape kit on her, so this was kind of what they were rolling with, saying that there was no proof that he had sexually assaulted her besides Terri Lynn's testimony. And supposedly Terri Lynn had asked him to drive to this rural area, where then she asked Michael to walk away because Tori was scared of him, and that's when she murdered Tori. According to Michael, he was not involved in Tori's murder, that he did not assault her, but that he did help clean up. Thankfully, though, Michael was found guilty of first-degree murder, and both he and Terri Lynn were sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole until 25 years had passed. Terri Lynn, though, was transferred to a healing lodge, which I guess like a mental health institute, and it allowed for more independent living. And people were not happy about this. They were pissed, rightfully so, because this monster of a woman had killed a child and let her monster of a boyfriend assault her. It really pissed people off because this would basically let Terri serve out her sentence in a less harsh environment than prison. And when this outrage started, the public safety minister, Ralph Goodale stepped in and was like, hey, how the hell did this happen? No, go back to prison. So when she gets back to prison, this woman actually has the nerve to file for unfair treatment because she was sent to this healing lodge and then sent back to prison. So obviously it was dropped. No one took it seriously. Like, okay, you insane person. How about you give some financial compensation to Tori's family instead? When they searched Michael's laptop, they found that he had looked up child abuse and underage bad things leading up to the months of Tori's abduction and murder. They also found some certain types of animal abuse regarding a dog in Terri Lynn's past. So this animal abuse ended up being so bad that they had to put this dog down. This was how bad this woman, this monster, hurt this animal. They also found in Michael's car a gym bag that had blood that belonged to both Tori and Michael on it. This case was featured on America's Most Wanted, so I don't know how I hadn't heard of it until now. On July 26, 2012, Michael actually tried to appeal his conviction under the grounds that the judge had given flawed instructions to the jury. However, the 30-day deadline to appeal had passed by the time that the papers were received, but this was attributed to his inability to use the telephone to contact legal counsel. So basically they said that because he wasn't allowed to use the phone to call his lawyers, that they needed an extension. And he was actually granted an extension for this appeal. Help. So an extension for his appeal was granted, and on June 10th, 2013, he appeared by video in a bid for his appeal. He was turned down for legal aid for his appeal process, and on August 12th, he had his court date postponed until September 10th, 2013. The appeal was set in motion in December of 2013, but as of January 20th, 2016, no materials had been filed, and on October 24th, 2016, he appeared at his appeal hearing at Osgoode Hall in Toronto, and the appeal was quickly dismissed the same day, as it should be. So as of right now, he's still serving out his sentence. And that is the case of Tori Stafford, a tragic and senseless murder that did not need to happen. Like I said, there's so many things that Terri Lynn could have done instead of bringing a child to Michael to assault and to murder. This case makes me infuriated, and I want to know what you guys think. So let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!